So we're going to do a little wax block carving. Now I have this book, Tooth Carving Manual. And when was it published? Let me see. Published in 1948. Huh, that's my age. Oh, I didn't realize that. Columbia Dentiform Corporation. So you'll never guess what typodonts they used to make. Columbia typodonts. So, all right. So here's a wax block. And there's different sizes of wax blocks. This one is certainly larger than we need, so we're going to have to end up cutting it down. I normally use a number 25 scalpel blade too. But here's basically a number 7 wax spatula. So here's some, I copied some of the sheets from the manual. So you can look at these while we're going along. And these outline the strategy. So we're going to start with this block. And, you know, it would be nice if the block were this size, 9 millimeters by 7.8 by 25.5. But we're going to have to make it that size eventually. And so we're going to just start by doing a central. And so that's a good one to start with. It's going to show you all the different techniques and so forth. So this is what it's going to look like looking at it from the labial view. So we have to sketch out on this block certain lines which indicate, which makes sure we have the right height. So for example, we want to have the line from here to here. We want to make sure that's 11.3 millimeters from this point up to this point. So we put a line over here, and then we know we have the height right there. So it's going to curve up something like this. This area right here, that's the width of the tooth mesial distally at the neck. So at the CEJ proximally. So if we draw 6.5 millimeters there, we know that CEJ is going to come up something like this in this area here. And then, so that's where the root is going to basically come up, and then we're going to have the shape here and over here, which we're going to make match the tooth as much as we can. So the apex is going to be down here, so we know we have 11.3, we have 25.5 altogether. The apex is going to be right here. So we're going to sketch everything out. We're going to draw everything on the surface of the wax like this. And again, keeping the most gentle part of the CEJ here, keeping the neck at this point. The height of the CEJ in the proximal area above the facial and gingival part of the CEJ on the facial side is something that we probably remember from anatomy, but it's going to be a couple of millimeters coming up here, but we'll deal with that when we do the proximal surfaces of this tooth. Right now we're just going to get all the measurements right, and we're going to draw it out on the facial surface. We're just going to look from the facial view, and then we're going to cut away everything that we can all the way toward the back. So now we're going to have the shape of the tooth, and it's going to, all these walls are going to be perpendicular and going all the way to the back of the tooth. Then we're going to have a side here, and then we can start working on the shape of the tooth looking from the side. So here's the front of the tooth that we just drew over here, and then now we go to the side. Okay, so we have the width of the tooth facial-lingually at the CEJ drawn out here. We still have the same position here. We already have that. We're going to make the same position on the lingual side as well. We have 3 millimeters height, curvature of the CEJ in the proximal area. And that's the mesial side. The distal side tends to be a little bit less than that, but it's not really specified over here. It's shown here though. So a couple millimeters on the distal, 3 millimeters on the mesial. So we expect the CEJ to be carved like this. Okay? But we're going to draw out the view of the tooth from the mesial view or from the proximal view. And then we're going to cut away all the excess, just like we did before. So now we have the shape of the tooth looking good from the facial view, and we have the other direction looking good that way. So when we look down the axis of the tooth, then we have corners, and we need to start rounding the corners. That's where it gets a little bit more tricky. So we're going to round over these corners on the occlusal part. We're going to make sure we get a nice CEJ curvature down here. We're going to round over the corners on the root all the way down to the apex. That's the basic strategy. Now, if you look at this book, and I didn't copy this over, but for each tooth, there's a series of measurements that we have, so we're kind of working with them already. So for example, for the central incisor, overall length 25.5, length of crown 11.3, mesial distal crown 9, labiolingual crown 7.8, mesial distal neck 6.5, labiolingual neck 7. So those are the numbers that we basically have included in what we're doing right here. Okay, so we're going to start by measuring some things out, and so I have a ruler in millimeters, and so we want 25.5 millimeters right from the beginning. That's the overall length. So we could go ahead and mark that off. So 25.5 would be right here. So that's the overall length. Now, we don't have to be too exact about where we draw this, because if this is the end where the apex is, the apex is going to be right in the middle of this area. So the apex is not going to be anywhere near these lines, but at least this will give us the overall length of the block, and that'll give us a pretty accurate way to get the overall length of the tooth right. Okay, so a lot of times I just go ahead and use a scalpel blade to cut this, so we'll see how we can do here. Scalpel blade would be a little bit more efficient, obviously. And I have a scalpel blade sitting around somewhere that for some reason didn't end up in here. So we'll see what we can do to get this at least the right length. But it's not a number 25 blade. Yeah, thanks though. 25 blade's way easier, so I'll try this for right now, and then we'll see. This is more like the sharpness of a Lacron carver. So I'm going to have some Lacron carvers here in a couple of days. I'll have some more wax. This is a number 7 wax spatula, or at least it's close to that. This is probably a little more robust. It's more designed for surgical procedures. Yeah, in the elevator. But we're going to just use it for this. Tomorrow I'll have some wax spatulas that are a little bit sharper and a little more delicate. So it would have been nice if I had started at the beginning with a block that was the right length and so forth. We don't want to cut too much at one time. When you're cutting this wax, you want to scrape it more than you want to cut into it. If I cut into it really deep like this, it's going to break the whole thing. Yeah, it's going to push the two pieces apart, and it's going to fracture catastrophically. So we're going to try to just scrape a little bit at a time as we go along here. Then we're going to have a little more control. And again, there are some blocks that you can get that are a little closer to the size that we want. We're not going to try to make these side pieces the length that we want, or the width that we want so much. That's just way too hard, but we can at least get the length pretty accurate from the beginning here. Now again, we don't care about that because the apex of the root's going to be right here, so that's not even near it. So we're going to cut that part away anyway. I didn't really break much above the line anyway. Okay, so we're going to continue like this. See what we can get. Again, the duller the instrument, the more likely it is to break the wax, because it tends to push the two parts of the wax apart, and then it fractures.
So doctor, do they give us the dimensions or do we have to figure it out?
Well, that's a good question. If they tell you what tooth to do, it's probably that they're going to have you do, then it's best to just memorize the dimensions. But, you know, it's hard to tell. I mean, certainly, I would expect them to give you the dimensions, but, you know, maybe they're just feeling particularly mean that day. And if they're grading it based on the precise dimensions, then it's not particularly fair to expect you to measure the dimensions of all teeth. I mean, that's worse than National Board Part 1 or whatever. Yeah, when I taught tooth morphology, I didn't expect my students to know all the dimensions.
Actually, my school did.
Yeah, a lot of times people do.
But they were very mean, so it's not something that I didn't expect.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're pretty much at the right length. We can double check it, but you know what we care about is the apex is going to be right there. So at that point, okay, we're, yeah, about 27. Yeah, so we could make it a little bit shorter, but we can always change it a little bit later once we get more of the tooth done. Okay, so now we're going to sketch out the tooth. We're going to have the incisal edge here, and the apex down here. And so, okay, we're going to draw a line 11.3 millimeters from the incisal edge, and that's going to be where the CEJ is. So we could mark it. So there's about 11.3 there. Mark it on the other side. Draw a straight line in between. So that's approximately correct anyway. So that's where the CEJ is going to be. That's where this is going to be, right down here. And then we also have the width of the tooth at the CEJ at the neck, 6.5. And that width is going to be up about here to here. Because again, remember the CEJ rises in the proximal area. So we need to get this width right here, but we're going to mark it on the facial part, 6.5. We're going to keep it centered. So 6.5 centered is probably about right like this. So from about here to here. Something like that. What I really prefer doing is using something like this to draw on the wax. It's much more easy to control. Now I got it shifted over a little bit, didn't I? It's not quite centered, so I can shift it a little bit back. Oh, you know what? Yeah, there's 6.5, so let's go from about here to here. So that's where it's going to be centered. So Okay, but that's going to be mostly what we do when we're doing the proximal area. Now, if I had to use, if this is the only instrument I had, then I'm going to have to basically shape the incisal portion of the tooth right here. So if this is going to be the mesial over here and the distal over here, then the mesial is going to be a little less curvature up in here, isn't it? And it's going to come down like this, and it's going to come down and just touch this line. The distal side is going to have more curvature. It's going to come down and touch this line over here. Except for one thing. That looks strange, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay. You know why?
Because the curvature from downside is weird. And
No.
the crown itself is weird.
It's because I didn't measure. We should have 9 millimeters. That's the mesial distal width. This wax block, I didn't carve it down, so the mesial distal crown width is 9 millimeters. That's the maximum. So what do I have here? I've got 12. No wonder it looks so weird, huh? That doesn't look like a central. So what we need to do is draw lines for the 9 millimeters. So going from here to 9 millimeters and try to keep it centered, it's going to be something like this. This is the mesial distal width of the crown. Okay, so now we're going to carve down like this. Here's the mesial side. Going to come down this way and then curve down like this. And the distal side we're going to curve around like this. More curvature here. And then come back to the same gingival area. So now this is what we're looking at. Okay. So now it's starting to look a little more natural in terms of the height versus width and so forth for the central incisor. And so this is what we're going to see on the facial side, but we have the CEJ is right here. So from the CEJ, it's from the CEJ here that we come down to the apex. Okay, so it's this area over here. So something like this. So what we need to do now is cut all this away, and all this away, and all this away, and all this away. Okay, that's going to take a little more effort, isn't it? Okay. So again, I'm going to get my chair a little bit taller, a little higher.
Maybe your chair?
No, it's okay. I just need to look down on it a little bit more. So it's going to be basically scraping it away.
You know, doctor, back in the day in my university, we used to use like a flame torch, and we just heat the.
Oh, hot instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So we make it a hot instrument, you know, like with instead of scraping stuff away, we just heat it.
Yeah.
But you have to be very careful with that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And then slice it, right? With a heated instrument, you slice it.
We don't slice. We just put the instrument on it. Then from the heat,
Yeah.
it melts.
Oh.
So you have to be very careful. It was like a completely different technique. And then at the end, when you want to make the roundation,
Right.
that's when you use the, you know, like the cover itself.
Yes, yes.
Wait for it to become cold, then start carving.
Ah.
It saved us a lot of time, honestly.
Actually, makes sense.
Yeah, now I think what I'm going to do, just to save myself some time right now, the typical number 7 wax spatula is going to be a little sharper than this, a little bit easier to this. And also, when you're taking the exam, what they're going to do is they're going to give you a block that's smaller than this.
Wow.
So typically you can get blocks that are smaller than this, and so you won't have to cut so much away. But again, we're cutting directly from the facial to the lingual all the way across here to get rid of all this. But I think I'm going to go ahead and get my scalpel blade. And so that'll hasten things up a little bit when I'm making this video anyway. Okay, so see how much easier it is to have a sharper blade. So I'm going to stop right there right now. I'll come back and refine that a little bit more later. But again, we're trying to cut very vertically from the facial side to the lingual side here. We want everything as vertical as we can. Notice I'm going to cut in a little bit this way, but if I cut in right like this, it's probably going to break.
Yep. Yeah, this is the thing I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Even if it's near the apex.
yeah, so just shave it away. Just take a little bit and shave it down. It's much safer that way. Don't ever try to cut the wax. Just shave the wax.
So how hard is it? Like, is it, like it's gonna be strong enough to not burn it? I don't know what to expect because like each wax style is very different from the other.
Yeah, this is the wax, basically the wax blocks, the same wax block that USC uses. So it's brittle, but it shaves pretty nicely like this. You can get an idea as to the texture just by watching.
Can I make a look at the leftover?
Of course.
I wanna see the texture and whatnot. Thank you.
Just remember, it's not cheese.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't make a Caesar salad with it.
These are the biggest.
And again, whenever you try to shave off a little too much and you're cutting a little bit into the tooth, you're taking a big risk. Okay, so we're getting closer. So I've cut back at this level right here, and that's basically where the CEJ is going to start coming up like this. Okay, we're going to have the high part of the CEJ is going to be right up here and right here, so it's going to be 2 millimeters above here. So I want to cut a little bit farther up this way. But that's basically going to be, the only part that's left is going to be right here. So CEJ is going to come up like this and like that. So anyway, we're trying to get it so it looks good from the facial view. Because the outline is pretty critical, even though the only part of the tooth that we're going to be saving is, you can see this is the part of the tooth that we're going to be saving here. All this is going to go away. Most of this surface right here is going to disappear. But we have to draw from the side, we have to draw the other view of the tooth from the mesial and distal, and then carve everything away that direction. Then we should have something that starts to look, pretty much like a tooth. So again, this is where the CEJ is in the proximal area. So I just want to get the level of it there. I can carve a little closer to these lines here for the root, but not hugely important there. Want to make it as vertical as we can as we're cutting all the way down to the table. Okay. So right now I need to get rid of some of this bulge here just to make it look a little more natural on the mesial side. So we don't have much of a bulge on the mesial side, it's more on the distal side. Okay, so it's a little bit straighter over here typically and more rounded down through here. Okay, so that's basically all we need to do from the facial lingual view. Now we're going to draw out on the side where we are as far as the side view. Of course, we have to get some shape like this. Okay, so now we have the facial lingual width is 7 millimeters. Does that correspond to the table over here? So central, the labiolingual crown 7.8, but at the neck it's 7.0. Okay, mesial distal crown is 9 millimeters and 6.5. So 9 millimeters is what we did here, and the 6.5 is here. Now, from this view, we're going to have a width this way from the cingulum to the facial surface. We're going to have 7.8 labiolingual, and then we're going to have 7 millimeters at the cervix, which is where the cingulum is going to curve in this way, and then that from there to there, where the facial surface comes in, that's going to be 7.0. Okay, so we're going to measure this out. First of all, we're going to measure, so how wide is it labiolingually at the crown? 9 millimeters. So here's the 9 millimeters from here to here. Now, when you do that measurement, you can measure pretty far down here, because again, we have a curvature like this, and we have a cingulum over here. And that's from the cingulum area to the midfacial over here. That's the maximum width. So we're looking at the maximum width. Okay, so that's 9 millimeters in that area. We're going to center the incisal edge between here and here. So let's make the incisal edge right there. We have the, and then at the neck labiolingual, we have 7 millimeters. So again, if this is 9 right here, then it's going to be 7 where it curves in at the bottom of the CEJ, or the bottom of the cingulum, and it's going to be 7 over here where it curves in. Now, that's going to come all the way down to this level. Okay, so I kind of drew that wrong. This level is about right here. This is the 11.3 coming along like this. So the CEJ on the facial lingual is at the same level right here. So then we're going to, that's the cingulum here. It's going to curve in a little bit from here to here where the facial wall curves in a little bit. It's going to be 7 millimeters. So we're going to get an idea about that. Looking over here, so that's about 7.5 or so right now. It's going to come in a little more here, a little more here. So that's below the cingulum, and then the cingulum is going to come up like this. The incisal edge is right here, so we're going to have this above the cingulum. We're going to have a nice curvature coming up like this. The middle of the incisal edge is the centered facial lingually, and then we're going to come down like this. From the incisal edge this way. And this is going to get the full width, and then we're going to come back a little bit into here like this. So again, we're going to draw what it looks like from the proximal view. Fairly straight like this. Curve it out right to the surface. Back end underneath to the level of CEJ, 7 millimeters from here to here. Nice concavity over here. Incisal edge about this wide, centered facial-lingually. And then the cingulum coming down like this, and 7 millimeters from here to here. Then we're going to, now, So facialingually, now we're going to have the root coming down about like this. Something like that. So that's going to be coming down to the same apical area that we already defined from the other view. Okay. So something about like this. So we're going to rough that out. Now, when we do the CEJ on this side, so here's the CEJ on the facial lingual at this level, but in the proximal area, it's going to come up, won't it? So we're planning that it's going to come up like this. So from here, it's going to rise up. So we get that curvature from the CEJ, from the facial up here and then down to the lingual. Okay, so that gives us an idea as to what things are going to look like from the proximal view. So now it's time to cut away the excess here. And again, we don't want to cut the facial surface because that's the width of the tooth facialingually, lingually. But we can cut a little bit in here because it's going to come in so again, this is the level of the CEJ, so at this level it's going to come in a little bit. Then we're going to cut the root away. This is a pretty good visualization exercise, isn't it? So, one of the important things is, as we already discussed, is don't be in a hurry.
Yeah.
I tend to always be in a hurry. We have a lot more to cut away here because, of course, the block was a lot larger than the tooth originally.
Yeah.
Now, it's a little tricky because there's a concave part here, right? So we can't really do that with a straight blade like I'm using. We'll get close to everything, and then when we finish, we'll go ahead and make the concavity with the wax spatula or whatever instrument we have for scooping out something. What's that?
I might have something. Let me check.
Something what?
Something that can help you. No, I don't. I thought I have my carve right.
That's okay. The wax spatula will help me with the concave part.
But look what I found. The huge mirror.
Oh, that's not 2 inches though.
Oh, it's not?
Yeah, I thought you were talking about the 2-inch mirrors. A lot of times people call them bridge mirrors.
Yeah. They're smaller than that?
Yeah, that one, the one you have is smaller, yeah.
You see that?
Okay. So again, really keep an eye on your lines. So I can trim all the way to the incisal edge here. And again, try to keep fairly vertical as you cut those areas away. Okay, so we're pretty close to what we want. Yeah, a little tricky seeing. Okay, so without the concavity here and without cutting into this area underneath the cingulum, it's a little bit harder to recognize the basic shape of the tooth, but I can cut into that area under the cingulum a little bit. Then what we'd have to do is cut this out, but and we can try a little bit like this. Get a little concavity in that area. I haven't drawn it on the other side. You don't have to draw it on the other side as long as when you're cutting really vertically from one side to the other, but we're going to use this side as the guide, but it's hard to cut vertically when you're cutting this concavity like I am right now. But anyway, we'll get a little more of the shape later. Now, we do have the other end of this instrument, so we could start to use that and get a little more shaping in here.
Wow. Scooping.
Yeah, scooping it out. So now we have all the dimensions the way we need them to be. You know, the maximum width here, and the width here, and the width here, and the width here. We have all those measured out. So now once we get this done in both directions, then it's a matter of starting to make it look like a tooth. So you see we're getting the facial area like that. It's not quite uniform across there. They make it a little bit more uniform all the way down to here, a little more vertical. Getting right down to the edge, we can always come back with an instrument like this and just scrape it a little bit smoother and get whatever shape you want. Notice the incisor edge gets pretty wide toward that other side, just because of the way I cut across. But again, we're maintaining the basic shape, mesial distally, mesial side, distal side, and so forth. We know where the CEJ is right here. We know where the CEJ is right here. And then from there, we're going to let the CEJ rise up into the proximal area until we come all the way up to here. Then we're going to let it come down here, all the way down to this point right here. So getting the CEJ is a really important part of this. And again, maintaining that the millimeters that we had here, what was it, 11.3? So we did 11 let's just double check it. So the height, 11.3. So 11.3 down to about right here. So this is the maximum length from here to here, but then it rises as we come around that corner. So we're going to start to think about corners, but as we do that, we're going to make sure we keep track of the CEJ, the way it rises and falls. So the curvature of the CEJ is important to get. And the width facial-lingually at the CEJ and the width mesial-distally at the CEJ. So I'll try to use whatever instrument we have to get the basic shape here. Once we have the CEJ where we want it, then we can start either on the crown or on the root and start to actually round over the corners of the tooth. You know, we can come like this from the CEJ down this way and start to round over this corner. But start at the CEJ and come toward the apex. And then as you come up here, you can start cutting there. We want, from the CEJ, we want the root to be straight, coming down this way. A lot of times people are going to have a bulge on the root near the CEJ, which is not a natural shape. But if you start at the CEJ and come scrape down this way, it makes it a little bit easier. So we can see we're starting to get some curvature there. So the roots tend to be a little easier to do because the crown has several different curvatures. So let's get the corners done first. And be careful when you put your thumb on there, okay? So I think you were saying earlier, a lot of times people leave a block here.
You have to leave a block. I heard the example last time.
Okay, well, even if you don't have to, it might be wise to have left a block there and then gently carve the block away later so that you don't break the apex when you're carving the way I am right now. It's pretty easy to break the apex when you're doing this part of the carving right here. Okay, so in any event, again, we want to make sure that from the CEJ, it comes straight down. There's no bulge or convexity in the root near the CEJ. And of course, we've still got the CEJ down here, rising over here. Now, of course, it's going to look more natural when we carve the corners of the crown. And then we'll see how much more we have to cut in terms of making these rounded roots over here. Okay, so let's start to work on the occlusal, on the crown part right here. So we're going to have a rounded corner up here. So again, the height of contour is right here and right here. So carve the corners above the height of contour and then carve the corners below the height of contour so that we can get the right shape in both areas. And so where's the widest width? It's about right here and about right over here. So don't touch those areas. Okay? And the widest width facial angle is from here to here. Don't touch those areas. Don't touch in here. Okay?
Basically, the contact areas, right?
Yeah, the contact areas on the mesial and the distal. So leave those areas alone. Okay. We're going to carve into those areas. We're going to make these embrasures here. This curvature is, of course, the embrasure. But again, we're also going to have kind of a marginal ridge form over here, aren't we? So we can, on the facial side, we're going to carve a little concavity up toward the incisal while we're making this rounded area over here as well. So we want to look at it in a lot of different directions so we can see what we're really getting. So you can look at it from the facial. Then look at it this way, and then look at it this way. So you got to see all the views, just like we're doing some composite bonding on somebody's anterior teeth. We want to look in all three directions to make sure we have the shape three-dimensionally the way we want. Now, notice that on the facial side, we're starting to get closer to what we want. On the lingual side, it's very different because we're going to curve in like this, aren't we? So we're going to, when we round over the lingual side, we're going to make it much more rounded so that the cingulum is much more narrow. We're going to let it converge a lot more. So to make this look more natural, let's work on this area here. Okay, so again, I've sort of drawn here the lingual convergence that I need.
I have to go back and do the anatomy of the tooth really nicely. For all the teeth. Sorry, not for anatomy, more for.
So again, don't touch this contact.
Yeah.
We're going to carve down here. Down here. Again, I'm trying not to put any pressure on the tip. Then I'm going to make it more rounded down here in the root area. I'm going to bring the CEJ up. Again, more here. But everything gets more narrow toward the lingual side, to where the cingulum is. But again, really try to keep track of where the cingulum is going. And again, a sharper instrument is going to make this a lot easier. I'm glad we didn't have to use this instrument to cut away all the excess. Again, notice when I carved up here, I deliberately avoided the contact area. You don't want to touch that at all. Same thing over here. If this is the contact area, leave it alone. So we're going to be fairly flat across the facial surface. And then the facial embrasures, again, fairly well defined. Keep coming back and reiterating the CEJ. We don't want to get too narrow from here to here. Now, how wide are we right now? So at the neck, labiolingual neck is 7 millimeters. So how far are we away from that right now? So we're pretty close to 7. Yeah, pretty close to 7 at the neck, so. So it's just a matter of making these corners. So you have the corner up here, you have the corner down here on where the enamel is, and you have the corner of the root coming down from the CEJ.
So where's the mesial?
This is the mesial, this is the distal. Okay. Yeah, we have more roundness on this line angle up here.
The contact is incisor 130, right?
Yeah, that's going to tend to be about up in here somewhere. So.
The mesial is on the bed.
So we also have to be careful if they tell us like make 8 or 9, because this one has.
Yeah. Better look at it. So I'm making 8 right now, aren't I?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's 8.
Okay, so again, it's fairly flat down through here, all the way up to the incisal edge.
Yeah, shouldn't it have like a smaller incisor bit?
Yeah, it's going to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, still pretty wide, but we haven't really carved the lingual surface yet too much. And I haven't made the concavities, these concave areas on the facial. Haven't made any mamelons yet or anything like that. Yeah, we're going to have a lot to carve away here, which we'll do with the other side of the instrument. So we have the shape. We got a little bit of a marginal ridge here, a little bit of a marginal ridge over here, a little concavity here, a little concavity over here. Then we have the convexity down here. Don't touch much right here. That determines the width. Then we know where the CEJ is here. Make sure it rises all the way from there up to there. Come down here. Now don't cut too deep with the CEJ, but just define it so then you can come down from the CEJ down into the root.
Yeah.
Get the shape that you want. We still want to have the width from here to here and the width from here to here correct, so try not to change that too much. So start at the CEJ, angle the instrument following the direction of the CEJ when you come down this way, then around over here. Got some excess over here, then angle it following the curvature of the CEJ down here. We haven't got the cingulum shape the way we want it yet. Still too wide in this area. So as I said to a few of you earlier, a lot of times what happens is, USC, gives you every reason to think that you're going to be doing this on the exam, and then they don't ask you to do it. If you've done a lot of them before, then, no biggie. But, if you put a lot of time in learning how to do this, and they don't ask you to do it, it's kind of disappointing.
Yeah. Well, not really. But here's the thing, if they don't ask us to do it, then do we have to do one more preparation?
Well, you have to do whatever they tell you to do. Whatever that is.
Yeah. Because I'd rather do this and not do, like a third preparation.
Uh-huh.
Imagine they ask you for class 2 and like a BNF preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Ask you for an online also without those.
Excellent. All right. Sounds like fun to me. Okay, so we're going to get a lot more roundness in this area. Okay, I'm going to make the incisal edge a little thinner, both on the facial and the lingual. It's pretty well centered, but I want to reduce the incisal edge from the facial. And then also from the lingual. So I'm reducing it, but I'm losing a little bit of those concavities and the curvature here that I got before, so I can put that back in. Now I'm going to scrape more from the lingual side up to the incisal edge. I'm sorry?
The periosteal elevator is doing the job very nicely.
Yeah, sort of, but
It's better than the carve.
the wax spatula is going to be a little bit easier. I'm getting some of those tomorrow. The cron, it's going to be, all depends how sharp they are.
Yes. We can get the wax carver on Amazon.
Yeah, I've ordered the Lacron and I've ordered the number 7 wax spatulas.
But the Crown, if you get it from Amazon, it's not going to be too, sharp.
Study.
Yeah.
It's not going to be sharp.
We might want to sharpen them up a little bit. I'll sharpen them if we need to.
Oh yeah, I need doctor.
You need what?
Wax carver, wax spatula and Lacron carver.
Yeah, okay, they're coming.
And I need the wax block also.
Okay, I've got plenty of them.
Thank you, doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, the wax blocks are really annoying. Because they, at least with the teeth, the preparation takes a lot of time. You can, work on multiple different types of preparations on one tooth, but like with the wax, once you're done with it, you're done with it.
Yeah. So again, whatever you do in terms of the rest of the contours, try to maintain the CEJ and the shape of the root below the CEJ.
So doctor, when they give us like cases for, let's say, cluster or whatever it is, do they give us x-rays for them? Or do they just...
They can. They have a history of basically giving a description of the case and then letting you decide what to do. They've been doing that for a long, long time. Whether they do that this year or not, who knows? It's hard to tell. Depends on who's giving the exam, who decides what to do, that kind of thing.
Do you remember in the webinar, those two girls, like the girls, our seniors, we can say, yeah, they were showing the case and there was an X-ray and a photograph.
Yeah, that's for the only.
That's for the all.
Yeah.
So I still want to get more convergence toward the lingual side here because that's still kind of bulky right in through there.
But you're almost done.
Yeah, we're getting there.
I think there's only the major thing left is the incisor edge, like from the posterior of the lingual.
Yeah, it's not real smooth over here. I'm going to make that more rounded down here, more rounded through here. So again, every direction you got to be looking at it. So we've been deliberately saving this area right here. Now I'm going to make it a little curved.
Yeah.
And just save the very center part right there. Okay? Curve it gingivally and incisively, facially and lingually, just to the center part. So we have nice curvature. We don't want any flat surfaces left. This is still the side of the block right there. So yeah, then it's basically a matter of looking at it from every different direction and making sure you're happy with the view from each direction. So there are certain things that you look at to get an idea. So you don't want to have any bulging areas in the root. So make sure you're always carving down close to the tip. Make sure when the CEJ comes in that it goes straight down from the CEJ. All the curvature is above the CEJ. One of the things that when you're doing like a wax pattern or something like that, and one of the ways to make it nice and smooth and a little bit shiny is to just use your fingers. The oil from your finger a lot of times smooths it out pretty well. You can even use your fingernail to carve some of these areas if you want. Okay, so this looks a little too square right in through here. So I want to have this gingival area converge a little bit more toward the facial. Same thing over here. It's still too square in this area here. So then it's sort of a matter of the artistic part of it, does it look like a central incisor, that kind of thing, from every direction. Still a little bit square. Okay, and then again, shape over here. So you got marginal ridges on the mesial distal from the facial side by making some concavities here and here. Those concavities come up onto the incisal edge, so that between those concavities and the incisal edge you get mamelons. And then we come down the lingual, and make marginal ridges on the lingual. They're fairly definite marginal ridges, so you're going to have a groove coming down in here and over here. Now, one of the things that, when you get to the point where you like it a lot, if you really want to make it look good, go over to the sink, take a cotton roll. I used to do this with wax patterns all the time. Take a cotton roll and some hand soap. And then it'll really shine it up. It'll look beautiful. And depending on the shape of the instrument, you might have a hard time making nice, smooth contours in here. But again, we want to get some grooves coming down so that we have well-defined marginal ridges, both in the mesial and the distal. Okay, so it's starting to be a little more pleasing now. And you really don't want to have any flat areas. There aren't any truly flat areas on any tooth. Okay, so the mesial curvature is more than the distal curvature, so that's okay. We could still make it a little bit more rounded underneath the contact here, and a little more rounded above the contact over here. So again, you can play with it for hours if you want, but I don't particularly want to. But this at least shows the basic principles of what we're trying to do, and some of the areas you want to be careful about as you... I'm sorry? Okay, so I'm going to just go over to the sink and see what I can do with a little cotton roll and a little hand soap, and I'll bring it back in just a minute.
That's why we used to use the flame. Like we flame it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All the irregularities. You can just bend them if you want.
Yeah, did you use a burner where you squeeze on it and the flame comes out?
Yeah.
Yeah, then you can very gently just melt the surface.
Exactly.
Yeah, I used
If
to...
you hit your finger, just like that, you can
Yeah, I used to use that on wax patterns all the time just to do the final finish. But you can see there's a little edge right here, so you want to round this over a little bit, or anything that looks like a sharp edge. But anyway, if you're getting the basic contours down, you have the basic anatomy, there's always refinement that can be done. Like, you know, this area right in through here. But again, every direction you look, you're seeing a contour that you need to make sure it looks natural. I would want to actually bring it in a little bit more in this way on the facial too. So again, it's mostly at the end, it's a matter of looking at it and saying, okay, how natural does that look from each direction? And I'd say we're getting close.
Natural enough. So we have 3.5 hours to do everything.
Yeah, how about that? Better carve fast.
It's not too little, you know, like 1 hour for the carving, 1 hour for the preparation.
No, I think it's a 5-hour thing, so it's 2 hours carving.
Are you sure?
Yeah, and 3 hours for 2 preps. I think
2 hours carving. Wow, I would give them 50.
Yeah.
I'd make the entire job, you know. Choose whatever you want.
See, it's too flat from here to here. So we come in a little bit farther.
It looks like a really nerve carving, is it?
Yeah,
It's fun.
yeah, because I do action figures, so I love that.
Oh.
Yeah, I love to make action figures. I haven't done teeth carving since 10 years, exactly.
But yeah, since you do action figure carving you do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Carving, you know.
That should not be bad for you, at least. Like I have.
To an extent.
I made a necklace for my girlfriend.
Oh, nice.
And so I have another one I'm going to make too, but it's really nice because I make it in wax and then I cast it in gold.
Nice.
I just take it to the dental lab and have them cast it for me.
Nice.
Works out great.
Yeah.
So again, every little contour you can smooth out. So now it's not as flat across here, still a little bit flat. So all the different directions. Okay, well, I've pretty much beat this horse dead.
Oh, it looks pretty good actually.
Yeah, it's close.
There's a problem with the ridges here. They're not too defined, you know. You need more defined ridges.
Yeah. It's hard to use this to get as deep as I would like to go.
Big, right?
Yeah. The wax spatulas that I'm going to get are going to be a little bit smaller. Okay. I'm going to let it alone for right now.